Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Dougy. So Alexandre Levay has made a full episode on what went down in Montreal, and she's got the footage from Natasha. Now, still no word from Natasha. I've been kind of trying to click on her page. I just hope everything's okay with her, like really I do. We're going to also talk about Trump unleashing the energy. And, Doug Ford opened his mouth up, and I was warning at the beginning about what was going to happen. It's been confirmed. They're upping the coal tonnage and going to start maxing out all of the coal power plants. And they're starting in the northeast areas, concentrating mostly on all of the energy that comes in through Ontario. And from what I've been reading with some posts and threads and stuff, I haven't really got any positive confirmation, but it sounds like they're going to start there and head east. So they're going to start cutting off Quebec and whoever else that supplies power to any of these eastern states. You can thank Dougy the Liberal for that. Then hopefully we're going to try and there's a couple clips from Jordan Peterson. He was on Piers Morgan. I think it's imperative that we kind of get him out there on what he says. He's a great mind. I really like the guy personally. And then if we still have time, I found a small clip about the one officer that's also involved. Now, he's not the one who wrote the letter, but he was mentioned that how he was singled out with disinformation, and some illegal activities. I'm pretty sure, like I said, there's a lot to this. I've been trying to piece it out. There's a lot of things that these people can't talk about. Northern Perspective had a great episode that I got about halfway through. I'm going to finish watching the rest of it here tonight with the actual two officers that wrote the letter. But yeah, anyways, I just found this one small clip with the one guy that they're talking about. I figured I'd throw it up there as well, and just to finish the show off with. So let's just get started. It's not necessarily graphic per se. Anything to do with this whole Hamas protest is graphic, but what they do to Natasha, I showed this on previous episodes. This is some better footage and the actual vocals of what was going down. So just for a heads up there, it's painful to watch. It really is painful to watch. Let's get started.
Iyad's no stranger to controversy. He is known for pro-Hamas speeches and posts alongside his son Bara Abu Ahmed and Mahmoud Kadid, leaders of Montreal for Palestine, with others. I have been investigating them for a while, and since Iyad had blocked me on Instagram and ignored my emails, I took the opportunity to ask my question in person. That's what journalists do. But at that moment, an officer, Agent Fortier, physically shoved me saying, "I know who you work for. You are with Rebel News." He accused me of stirring trouble and threatened to arrest me. He kept repeating my outlet's name, painting a target on me.
I did nothing.
Non, mais vous êtes dans la manifestation en train de créer un événement. Je le sais pour qui vous travaillez. Vous travaillez pour Rebel News. Juste pas vous interposer.
Stop touching me.
Yeah, just go for it.
You can't touch me.
Go for it.
Tu peux pas me toucher, monsieur?
J'ai le droit de vous toucher pour vous tasser parce que vous créez un événement. Puis là, si vous continuez à faire ça, je vais vous arrêter pour entrave.
Vous allez m'arrêter?
Oui.
Pour être agressé par eux?
Non,
et
c'est vous
attaqué?
qui allez dans la manifestation.
Oh, oui,
vous n'avez pas le droit d'y aller. Allez pas vers la manif, là. L'agent Fortier. L'agent Fortier, allez pas vers la manif, je vous le dis.
When Natasha stepped in, asking the same police officer to control the mob, Agent Fortier turned on her too. He told Natasha we were disturbing the protest just by being there. Can you believe it? They even justified the crowd's anti-Semitic chants and calls for genocide, saying it's protected under the Charter of Right and Freedom. But let's be clear. Hate speech, calls for genocide, and supporting terrorist organizations are not protected. They are crimes. Then things took a darker turn. Agent Fortier started intimidating Natasha, getting right up in her personal space, despite her being meters away from the protesters. She asked him to stop touching her. His belt and gear were brushing against her, and she tried to mimic his behavior to make a point and to stop doing what he was doing. That's when he grabbed her hips, a completely inappropriate move for a male officer. When Natasha pushed his hand away with her free hand, she was filming with the other and said, "Don't touch me." He snapped. He grabbed her arms, twisted them, and arrested her for assaulting and obstructing an officer. Watch the footage.
Allez pas dans la
Il dit que c'est
manifestation.
nous autres qui provoquent.
Créez
là.
l'événement. Créez pas l'événement.
Je comprends pas qu'est-ce que vous comprenez pas. Depuis le début, ils nous attaquent. On a marché tranquillement alors qu'on prie tout le long. Ils sont venus par nous autres. Ils ont commencé à nous attaquer. Je l'ai tout sur le film de toute manière parce que j'ai trouvé ça.
We're filming it. We're journalists.
Yeah, I know, but you can't run in the
They
manifestation.
swarm us and put us
If
into
you
it
don't want to get
every
swarmed,
single
you
time.
don't go in the protest.
I am
You stay on
filming
the
it.
side
This
like
is
this.
my job. I've always on the side and moved around and they swarm. Every
You
time.
see, that's disturbing a protest because you hear.
This protest is illegal and should not be happening in Canada. You cannot advocate for
Well,
genocide.
they happened because we have a shout that was in their face, so they are allowed.
We have limitations. I know exactly what the charter writes.
That cop has no idea what he's talking about. There are limitations on it. You cannot be calling for the elimination of anybody, let alone an entire people. That is crossing the line. But these people are trying to use democracy as a tool to force and allow this type of hate to take over. And our government is just allowing this to flood in by removing any of the vetting. This is what you get. This is the post-national state. Fear, hate, and division, and chaos.
Sorry,
So
you
don't
cannot
go there
agitate.
anymore, okay?
You cannot agitate for genocide. You know that, right? Do you know the charter? You can't.
I'm not
threaten
talking to
people.
you. I'm just telling you, don't
Stop!
disturb.
Don't fucking touch me, okay?
I'm not
out of
touching you.
patience.
I'm not touching you.
You are literally
touch me.
touching me.
You touch me.
Get your hands off me.
Oh, look.
Hey, get your hands off me.
The crowd cheered as they assaulted a female reporter. 3 officers pinning a mother and a journalist, twisting her arms and wrists while she cried out in pain. Her camera was still rolling around her neck.
You're going to break my arm. You're going to break my shoulder. You're going to break my shoulder.
You're under arrest to assault on a police officer.
You're going to break my shoulder. Did you hear what I said?
Silence. You will be able to talk with the lawyer.
He's hurting my arm. He is hurting my arm. He's hurting my arm. Go, you're hurting me.
I warned you like a couple times.
Okay, well,
Now you are fine.
all right.
Sit here.
Ouch, ouch!
That's what.
Ouch!
Calm down.
Sit.
You're hurting me. Don't put me into different directions. You're going to break my fucking arm.
Calme-toi.
So
Calme-toi.
now do you have a piece of ID on you?
Well, what do you think? Do you think I can get one out right now?
Huh? No, I'm just asking you.
Yes, obviously.
You have any weapon on you?
No.
Vous l'avez-vous vu comment vous l'avez traité? Sérieusement, vous auriez pu vraiment y faire mal. Vous auriez pu l'étouffer. J'ai tout sur caméra. C'est une femme. 3 hommes. Qu'est-ce que vous dites qu'on provoque?
Provoquer les gens, c'est tout.
Parce que filmer, monsieur, c'est provoquer. Nat, are you okay?
No, they hurt me.
I saw it. There were 3 men on you.
Yeah. Well, men, there were 3 police officers on me. Men seems like an exaggeration.
This is a sad state of affair. Now, these people don't want Canada seeing what's going on. They want to be in the shadows. They want to grow. And the last thing they want is the truth coming out. I know this firsthand. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I befriended a couple of Palestinians. And I've got a lot of Muslim friends. And like I said, Indian and Pakistani. And there's a lot of great Canadians out there. Don't lump everybody into this group. With the help of the media, they've been pushing a narrative, a wrong narrative. I study history. I know what happened to my ancestors. This is how it all started. We are repeating the past by not putting our foot down where it needs to be, to snuff this out before it becomes a problem. And now it is all across our nation. Now the media likes to do the whole right-wing extremist is the biggest threat to democracy. Right-wing extremist is the biggest threat to democracy. Right-wing extremist. This is the narrative that they're pushing. I haven't seen any right-wing extremists. I watch the news, I study, I read. I don't see it. I don't see it. Now, unless they're trying to lump in this as being right-wing extremists, which they never do. This is not right-wing extremists. This is leftism. This is fascism. This is an ideology of thinking you are a superior class or religion over top of people and willing to do whatever it takes to remove other religions off the face of the planet, which is wrong. And Canada has been called out on this. And the calls have been growing louder and louder and louder, but mainstream media, the propaganda arm of our leftist government, doesn't want this coming out. This is the latest report that came out. And I'm going to read it to you. Anti-Semitism audit calls out legacy media for amplifying Hamas and anti-Semitism. A leading Jewish advocacy group that accused legacy media in Canada, particularly the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, yes, the CBC, the worst propaganda. Like these guys, CBC is just garbage. They're not news, they're garbage. Of enabling the spread of anti-Semitism through biased reporting, disinformation, and a failure to provide balanced perspectives on Israel and Jewish issues. B'nai B'rith, Canada's annual anti-Semitism audit, devoted a section of the report, to calling out legacy outlets for being active participants in the spread of disinformation and the normalization of anti-Semitism. The annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents found that reports of anti-Semitic harassment, violence, and vandalism have seen a 124.6% rise in just 2 years, and warned that the number of actual incidents is likely higher due to underreporting. One section of the audit calls the CBC out by name and accused multiple Canadian media outlets of one-sided reporting. Media outlets across the country have become active participants in the spread of disinformation, the normalization of anti-Semitism, and the justification of violence against Jews, the report said. From newsrooms to taxpayer-funded broadcasters, from online media platforms to the entertainment industry, Canadian media institutions became megaphones for terrorist propaganda, sanitizers of anti-Semitic rhetoric, and manufacturers of sympathy for extremists in 2024. B'nai B'rith said that by framing stories to paint Israel as the aggressor, omitting the critical context of the actions of Hamas terrorists, and the amplifying voices that aim to delegitimize the Jewish state, Canada's media stakeholders were complicit in the rise of anti-Semitism in Canada. The report accused several outlets of referring to Hamas terrorists as militants while characterizing Israel's defense actions as genocidal acts of aggression. They noted that the CBC and other outlets actively spread terrorist propaganda by treating the casualty figures reported by the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry as gospel while questioning official statements produced by Israel. Hundreds of Israeli civilians, men, women, and children, and Holocaust survivors were kidnapped by Hamas, paraded through Gaza as war trophies, and inhumanely held captive, the report said. When these innocent hostages were finally released, Canadian outlets equated the hostages with Palestinian prisoners convicted of rape, terrorism, and attempted murder. It goes on and on and on. I urge you to read the entire article. I know for a fact, like I said, right from Palestinians' mouths. God rest their souls. of what was going on there. You wonder why the Arabic countries around won't take these people in? Because this has become a disease within Palestine. Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, they have infiltrated every aspect of that society. They are hidden throughout the people. It starts right from birth where they train them. And this is money funded by UNRWA and the UN and Canada. Yes, your tax dollars, which we just saw another, 70 some million dollars get sent to the new leaders of Syria. Do you know who these leaders are? These are the same people who led Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These are the most extremist arms of that ideology. None of the Arabic countries want anything to do with this. In fact, they are at war in Yemen over it, trying to stop this ideology. But mainstream, nothing. Zilch. Nada. Crickets. It's embarrassing. This is exactly what I saw in history happen to my family through the pretty much the beginning of the Second World War. And we've got thousands of them that they brought across and hid in our country that we still don't know about today. This is disgusting. Now moving on to the U.S. U.S. is like on a mad dash to literally steal every single buyer of energy it can, and it's starting with all of the countries that were asking Canada for our energy. Listen carefully.
The Army Corps of Engineers will complete as soon as next week its revised list of energy projects that could be fast-tracked under President Donald Trump's declaration of a national energy emergency, a U.S. Army Corps official told Reuters. The Army Corps, a federal engineering service with permitting authority over projects involving wetlands and waterways, posted in February a list of more than 600 projects requiring faster environmental approvals, but then quickly removed the list from its website to give the agency more time to vet projects. The original list included high-profile projects such as Enbridge's Line 5 oil pipeline tunnel replacement
Line 5, people. Line 5.
Under Lake Michigan, several natural gas power plants, and liquefied natural gas export terminals proposed by Cheniere and Venture Global. But
Line 5. Power plants. Thank you, Dougy.
it also included several potential errors, including some projects that had already been canceled or completed. The heads of the Army Corps' 8 geographic divisions will receive revised lists from the heads of 41 sub-districts by Friday, and then share the compiled list with Army Corps headquarters as soon as next week, said Shane McCoy, head of regulatory affairs for the Corps' Detroit office, on Monday.
Fast tracking. And then, of course, you have this.
Now, under the executive order that I will sign in a few moments, we're slashing unnecessary regulations that targeted the beautiful clean coal. We will rapidly expedite leases for coal mining on federal lands, and these two gentlemen are going to do a real job of it. You've already started. And we'll streamline permitting. We will end the government bias against coal, and we're going to unlock the sweeping authorities of Defense Production Act, the Defense Production Act, to turbocharge coal mining in America. We're going to guarantee that we have a strong business for many years to come, that your coal companies and your miners don't get all excited about their jobs, and then should a radical left liberal become president, they end the business right away, and somebody's built a plant and spent hundreds of millions of dollars in building a plant, and the plant is going to be closed because a Democrat got in or a liberal got in. They're opposed to coal, and Republicans are very much for it. Clean coal. And we're...
You notice how he keeps saying that? That's that fabulous technology created here in Canada that the leftist, socialist, fascist government, with their completely ignorant to science headspace, snuffed out and is still trying to completely crush. This is our technology, people. being used against us. Unbelievable.
We're going to give a guarantee that the business will not be terminated by the ups and downs of the world of politics. Under this order, I'm also directing Secretary Wright to use billions of dollars in federal funding to invest in the next generation of coal technology, which is an amazing technology in terms of getting the full potential of coal and also doing it in a very clean, environmental way. In addition, I'm instructing the Department of Justice to identify and fight every single unconstitutional state or local regulation that's putting our coal miners out of business, taking in almost $2 billion a day in tariffs. $2 billion a day. And we're doing very well.
And now this is directly linked to Ontario.
The U.S. coal industry has been declining for decades, but that may change after a series of executive orders signed by President Trump. 2822's Avery Nape joins us now live in the studio to explain how these changes may affect the industry here in our region. Avery.
Candace, good evening. President Trump has expressed his support for coal since his first term. Until now, though, there was little progress made to revive the dying industry, especially here in NEPA. 4 new executive orders were signed by President Trump, granting the coal industry much more room to operate in the U.S. These orders allow older coal-fired plants, originally poised for retirement, to continue producing electricity to meet growing demands on the power grid.
We're bringing back an industry that was abandoned, despite the fact that it was just about the best, certainly the best in terms of power, real power.
The orders would also prioritize coal leasing on federal land and streamline the permitting process for coal companies to operate their mines. Northeastern Pennsylvania sits on top of the largest known anthracite coal deposits in the world. And to the local coal industry, these executive orders are a welcome sight.
The more we make, more we produce.
They are going to have these plants back up to max capacity. They are already putting in loops and tying in other plants to make sure that they can start peak output in all of the northeastern states. This has become a focus now of the Trump administration, thanks to Dougy. I encourage you to check out my previous episodes. Like I said, especially if you start kind of at the beginning and work your way up, you will see as it progressed. I was seeing this. I read. I do lots of studying. I spend literally every waking moment checking all of this stuff out. This is coming. Dougy has just removed billions of dollars of revenue from Ontario. And it's going to keep going. It's going to affect Quebec, all the way across the East Coast. We have got to get on this. We need to get pipelines in the ground. We need to get our coal generating stations up and running and start installing this Canadian technology, the carbon capture technology, and actually start having companies come in, lower our tax base, have companies come in on their own because we are a cheap and affordable place for them to be, to run these AI. These factories are just, they need to be... Mr. Wonderful put a whole bunch of money. He's going to build one in Alberta. This is where the future's at. And we've got an entire northern area, sub-zero area, that we should have the energy infrastructure ran up there so that these companies can come in and 90% of their cooling is taken care of just by the environment alone. Canada has got the capability of being the wealthiest nation on earth, but our government refuses to unleash the true Canadian spirit. We're entrepreneurs, we're hard workers, and they have just tried everything to put their foot on our necks. It's got to end. Trump is stealing all the contracts from us. He's encircling us. This is real. And you're going to elect another liberal, the people who put us in this position. I am so pissed at the East right now. I've been embarrassed for decades, but this is just and again, I don't believe the polls. I do believe that the numbers are up, which scares me that we're not going to end up with a conservative majority. We may not end up with a conservative majority, but this is just beyond scary. Now let's move on to Mr. Jordan Peterson on Piers Morgan. This guy is brilliant.
How does Pierre Poilievre actually feel about this? Because he looked like he was on a certain pathway to become prime minister, and then bang, through no fault of his own really, and certainly no great work by his opponent, but all because of what's been happening in the US, everything has completely changed. I would imagine he's feeling very frustrated, isn't he?
Well, I have had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Poilievre on multiple occasions, and you know, he never took his victory for granted. One of the things he insisted upon when he was speaking with me was that he was going to campaign continually until the election on the assumption that things could shift radically in a sideways direction, and that his apparent lead was not something he would rely on. And I think he has done that. And he's certainly not happy with what's happened on the Trump side. And that is but I mean, if you're going to be the leader of a country, then you're going to have to deal with the unexpected. And I think he's done a credible job of that. Part of Poilievre's problem too is that communication problem, let's say, is that the Canadian legacy media, particularly the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, very much similar to the BBC, is state-funded and very much inclined to favor the ever-ruling Liberals, particularly because Poilievre has threatened, and I think he means it, to defund the CBC, which is an institution that royally deserves being defunded. It's incompetent to the core. But Poilievre is having a hard time communicating with Canadians, especially older Canadians who tend to get their news from the CBC, let's say, and assume that it's reliable like it was 30 years ago. And so he's facing that as an obstacle as well. And then he's also facing the fact that it's a very deep temptation for Canadians to parade themselves as morally superior to the evil and unpredictable Yankees to the south. And certainly the Liberals have been capitalizing on that and terrifying people about Trump and telling everyone that our relationship with the US is over, which is a preposterous claim in many ways, although Canada definitely needs to differentiate and make more sophisticated its economic structures. I mean, we're far too dependent on the Americans. And Trump is also, in some ways, to give the devil his due, pointing that out to Canadians. And one thing he said, and he said this to other countries in the world too, is that if you can't really bring anything to the negotiating table, if you have no real power, then why should we pay any attention to what it is that you are asking for or claiming? And I would also put that absolutely 100% firmly at the feet of the Liberals, who are hypothetically likely to rectify this now, because their policies have been, for example, there's no east to west pipelines in Canada to speak of, and that's definitely a Liberal, that's Liberal doing. And Carney says he'll rectify that, but he was the author of those policies to begin with. The other thing he's done that's so treacherous, like truly treacherous, is to present himself as an outsider. And what he means by that, I suppose technically, is that he's never been elected, which, you know, is a dangerous thing for an actual prime minister of a country. But he's been a key economic advisor, operating both in front of and behind the scenes in Canada for the last decade. And he's a man that's responsible in large part for the policies that have made Trump able to do exactly what he has done to Canada over the last month and a half. You know, if you're so damn daft that you've got no power when you come to the negotiating table, especially when you're dealing with the superpower Americans and, you know, madman deal-making Trump, then it's not surprising that you're going to find yourself at a loss and not holding the appropriate cards. And maybe Canadians have woken up to that to some degree, but they're definitely turning to the wrong man to solve the problem. So what's Poilievre is attempting to put forward his pro-working class policies, and he's very popular among young Canadians who should have a say in their future. But the saber rattling by the Americans has definitely worked to a staggering degree in favor of Mark Carney and the Liberals. And Canadians are deluded enough to think that he's a new guy, and he's not. And he's the worst of the old, that's for sure, you know. And
so true. Now, I played this backwards. I played that first. I thought it was kind of important to play that part first.
What's Poilievre is...
This was the earlier part, but I just thought that in order...
Trudeau resigned.
Just for the case
Trump
of the video
started
played
his
better.
saber rattling in the United States, particularly in relationship to Canada, although not uniquely. And Canadians have often united in the face of American expansionism. It's a historical trend, and it's also the case that Canadians have a proclivity to pride themselves on being morally superior to the United States, and any excuse is good enough to go down that road. And then the Liberals, also being relatively instrumental in Carney, decided that they would install a new leader, coronate him, and now we have a prime minister who's only been selected by about 130,000 Canadians. And the real issue here is, Pierce, I think that older Canadians who are likely to prefer Carney believe that he's a return to the stability, let's say, of the period between, well, even the post-war period, but particularly between 1990 and 2010. You know, Carney's a banker. Canadians think he's pro-free market. They think that he's pro-industry. They think that he's a genuine, old-style, stable, conservative, liberal type. And he looks the part, and he plays that, and that's how he puts himself forward. But the problem with that, sir, is that Carney is seriously bad news. Despite his international cachet and his lengthy CV and his term as Bank of England governor, that's all impressed Canadians and made them believe on the face of his CV that he's a competent person. But a little bit of investigation into what he believes and the scope of the oncoming disaster makes itself clear. I mean, Carney believes that 75% of the world's fossil fuels have to remain in the ground. He believes that every single financial decision that every individual makes in every company should prioritize decarbonization over every other consideration, right? He was UN climate envoy, and he started a consortium of businesses that agreed really to be under the aegis of central planning because he believes the climate apocalypse narrative. And my sense is that that entire narrative, and I mean entire, is nothing but the use of provocative and ill-founded fear to exercise a level of control over people that, well, we'll find unimaginable if it ever manages to manifest itself. And it's economically devastating. I mean, your country's been devastated by the net zero idiocy, and one glance at Germany should convince anyone that that's a really bad path to walk down. And so Canadians are looking for security. They think that Carney's a 1990s guy like leaders that we have had before. And they really they haven't done the investigative work necessary to actually understand who this guy is.
So, Jordan, like I said at the
Well
start.
said. Very well said. We're going to finish off the episode. Like I said, this is that one police officer that was mentioned in that open letter. He's not one of the ones that wrote it, but he was one of the ones where this disinformation, the dilution of lies and bureaucracy within CSIS and the heads of the RCMP investigative units accused him of things that were preposterous, absolutely preposterous, and kept that scenario going, vamped out by media, when the whole time China had completely infiltrated our government. Now, whether or not they were knowingly doing this, that's one thing to be said. I have my own personal hypothesis just from seeing what they've done in the past. I definitely do not trust those organizations at all. There's way too much politics involved, and when you're dealing with appointed positions, you are bound to get collusion, corruption, and political biasm. Let's take a listen.
taking a break from a hearing on his bail conditions in Vancouver. Tuesday was Bill Miker's first statements to Global News about the charges against him.
And this is the supposed double agent.
My response initially, amazement, and 100% rejected. It's totally false, without foundation.
Miker is accused of using his decades of experience as a former undercover operator in the Mounties to help China pursue people and assets who had fled that country. He'd been living in Hong Kong for years, where he'd founded a company that consulted in the financial sector.
It was sort of a jack of all trades.
The case against him began when CSIS tipped off the Mounties about Miker's alleged activities. He was arrested on a trip to Vancouver in 2023 and has been stuck in Canada since. But then this astonishing thing happened. Prosecutors released a confidential document that detailed Miker's account of having actually worked as a covert agent for CSIS in Asia, involving an apparent joint mission with Britain's MI6, helping to move weapons across borders, getting paid in envelopes of cash by CSIS.
Details about the methods and people involved in any country's covert intelligence program are always among the most closely guarded secrets, seldom revealed for decades, if ever.
Is that true that you are a previous covert asset of CSIS who worked in Asia?
Well, I won't comment on that, but what I would say, I was amazed again to see a document like that go out. I know from my time in government, we would never put out information like that.
CSIS declined to comment on the document because it's before the courts. The new twist in this strange case makes Miker either a national asset gone rogue, or in his words, someone betrayed by the very agencies he served.
You put a target on everybody's back, and if that's what you're intending to do, then you got to be accountable for that.
In Vancouver, Paul Johnson, Global News.
Now, this is what they were talking about in that letter, on how it seems as though CSIS had purposely, with the help and knowledge of these MPs, 9 MPs, to put these names out and expose our intelligent officers who were actually there watching China. So in other words, they sold out our spies. They gave out their names to our enemy, China, which controls our government. Let that sink in, people. That is how corrupt and infiltrated by China the Liberal Party has become. They have now sold out and exposed our spies who were looking out for Canadian interests to our enemy, China. This is no little thing. And this is what those 2 officers were talking about in the letter. And it happened to them as well. They were doxxed. And it seems like it was done to benefit China and the Liberal Party, to keep them in power. Are you ready? Are you ready? Get the ball. And CBC and CTV are pushing this all out, one side, and you're not hearing about that letter. I urge you, go to that previous episode, copy and paste that link on every single place you can possibly put it, in the comment sections, any of their Twitter, their YouTube, any of them. Force everybody who watches those channels to have access to it. Be nice, be polite, and quiz them. Why haven't you been talking about this? Force the curiosity of Canadians to look at that letter. This is what we need to do to save Canada, to start to save Canada. Sorry, my mic was off. Before I end this episode, I just wanted to kind of go back to the beginning here and end the show off stating that we've been losing some of the greatest minds in Canada over the last 7 years. We've lost Gad Saad. This is a defining moment for Canada. And there has been zero mention of all of these intellectuals and scholars on mainstream media. This happened to the pretext of World War II. But yet mainstream is telling everybody how all of these people are fleeing the United States. These professors are fleeing these universities and coming to Canada, and how this is such a good thing. These so-called professors and teachers are fascists. They're socialists. They preach the word of hate. These aren't the people we should be proud of coming. We've already got enough horrible teachers in these universities, and you can tell by a lot of what the last few, we'll say over the course of the last 15 years, have been teaching. And you can tell by the amount of students that are kind of involved in these protests and a lot of the ideology that you see, where they actually think socialism is a good thing. The great minds are leaving. The flawed, hateful, spiteful minds are coming, and they're preaching that this is a good thing. Again, this is what happened in Germany. Just food for thought. Gad Saad. It breaks my heart that we lost him. He's gone. And I can't see him coming back in the foreseeable future with all of this hate, this anti-Semitism, this push for, I don't know, allowing the hate to grow, allowing this ideology to fester. We need to purge the universities of all of these teachers. Now, if you're a student, record these teachers. Try and do it without them knowing. And record these teachers when they're talking about how, oh, socialism's great, and oh, yeah, the poor people in Palestine and all the rest of this crap. And get it out there. Share it. You can share it with me. I'll put it on. I'll have to edit it, or not edit it, but I'll have to fact check it. And of course, I won't put your name out there. And we need this to get out. We need these people exposed for who they are. Canada is crumbling. The very foundations that we were built on are sinking into this quicksand. And we need to do something about it. So I'm going to call that an episode. Hopefully you got all the information you needed and you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you already are subscribed, if you just subscribed, make sure you punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. I'm going to try and line up and edit short all the crap out of the debates and put it together for all my audience so that you can actually watch it in its entirety without like the gaps and all the crap that's involved, and especially the shit that CTV's running and CBC. Like CBC, they got them playing here. It's crap. And even what they're saying, they finally got some real media in there, and look at what these leaders are doing. This is just an embarrassment. It's just an embarrassment. Anyways, until the next time, you guys, I'm Alias the Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.